Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Dragon Queen by TurboDragonQueen. Monkey D. Luffy, or Luffy, is a 12-year-old half-dragon runaway. Watch as she sets sail 5 years early to become the Queen of Pirates. She just has to make sure her elder brothers don't catch her first and drag her back home. What could possibly go wrong? Bigger crew, bigger dreams, bigger family. Big shout out to all the warlords of this channel. You know who you are. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios.
It was some time later as Luffy, Jin, Sanji and Yosaku set sail to where Nami was. Luffy was jumping around the tiny boat. Yosaku was looking blue in the face, and Sanji was trying to get Luffy to sit down, while Jin watched in amusement. "Luffy-chan," Sanji said, "you should sit down before you make yourself sick again." Luffy huffed, but sat down anyway. "But I'm fine now, Sanji nee." "Luffy-chan," Luffy pouted. "You still aren't taking this seriously," Yosaku said. "Don't you realize that with every second that passes, we're getting closer to the infamous Arlong?" "Who is Arlong?" Luffy asked, curiously. "How do you not know about Arlong?" Luffy just shrugged and looked away. Yosaku sighed. "So what do you know about him?" Jin asked. "I only know that he's a pirate fishman worth 20 million berries." "Fishmen?" Sanji asked. 20 million? That's more than Krieg's, said Jin. "I'll start from the beginning. The reason why they call the Grand Line a pirate graveyard is because of Arlong and the two powers that run over it. The first of the powers are known as the Seven Warlords of the Sea. The warlords are pirates authorized by the government." "Seriously?" Sanji said. Luffy stiffened at the word government. "Why would a pirate of the sea want the government's approval?" Jin asked. "For protection, the government looks the other way in exchange for a cut of their treasure. To the other pirates, they're just the government's dogs. These guys are massively powerful. Hawkeye Mahawk is one of them." This caught Luffy's attention. Uncle Hawkeye's a warlord? Before anyone could comment, the small boat shook as a sea king rose up next to their boat. "A sea cow?" Luffy asked. "Sea monster," Yosaku yelled in panic. "What does it want?" "It's probably hungry. Then just give it food." Sanji proceeded to do just that. Unfortunately, the sea cow almost ate Sanji as well as the food, resulting in Sanji kicking him the face. "What the hell are? He was gonna eat me with the plate, what else could I do?" The sea cow roared in fury, but stopped. Sanji, Jin, and Sanji looked confused before they saw Luffy glaring. She looked at the towering sea cow, allowing some of her other's presence to leak out. The cow lowered itself into the sea, submitting to the girl. "That's not nice, Mr. Cow," she said, while the men just gaped at the sight of a 12-year-old scolding a sea king. "Just because you're hungry doesn't mean you can be rude." The cow mooed pitifully. Luffy took the plate from Sanji and offered it to the cow again. To the amazement of her companions, the cow very gently took the food from the plate. "There you go," Luffy said with a smile. "Was that so hard?" "Did she?" Jin began. "Just tame," Yosaku continued. "A sea king," Sanji finished as all three stared at the girl in awe. Suddenly she smiled. "Hey Mr. Cow, there's some place where we need to go. Can you help us get there?" she asked. The sea cow nodded. Line break. A few minutes later, Luffy and her friends were speeding along the water, with the sea cow, Momoa, pulling their boat. "Yay!" Luffy cheered excitedly as the speed they were going. "Is that where we're going?" Sanji asked as they saw an island in the distance that was getting close very quickly. "That's the place," Yosaku shouted. "So what now?" Jin asked. Suddenly the sea cow changed direction. "Hey, Mr. Cow, what are you doing?" Luffy cried, as they found themselves heading right. "You're going the wrong way." But the cow ignored her and kept going in the wrong direction. Luffy just shrugged and began to laugh as they headed straight for the shoreline. "Hey, we need to," Yosaku tried to say, before the cow slammed into the shore. The cow hit it with such force that the boat they were on was sent flying into the air. "Yahoo!" Luffy laughed. "We're flying. No, we're falling." Line break. Zoro's Pav Zoro was running through the forest, trying to find Arlong Park. A sudden crashing noise could be heard. "What's that sound?" Zoro asked as it grew louder. His mouth fell open when a boat came flying out of the trees. On the boat, he could see Yosaku, that Krieg pirate, and that blonde curly brow. And at the front of the boat, laughing her head off, was Luffy. "Hey, Zoro ni," she cried happily when she saw him. Luffy was all Zoro got out before being railroaded by the boat. "No one's pov, hee, that was fun," Luffy said. "Can we do it again?" "No," she pouted before looking around. "Hey, where'd Zoro ni go?" A muffled voice caught their attention. "What the hell were you doing?" Zoro yelled as he forced the boards off him. "What do you mean, Zoro ni?" Luffy asked innocently, though there was an evil glint in her eye. A tick mark appeared on his face. "Are you okay?" Sanji asked from his place on a crate, looking slightly bruised. Jin laid next to him on his back. "What did I get myself into?" He couldn't help but wonder. Yosaku, on the other hand, was buried in the debris with only his legs sticking out. "We're here to pick up Nami ne," Luffy went on as if it was obvious, causing another tick mark on the swordsman's face. "Have you found her yet? Where are Johnny ni, Usopp ni and Kayane?" At the mention of Usopp, a worried look appeared on Zoro's face. "Oh, no, Usopp. Come on. We gotta hurry." "Why?" "Because that dude." Zoro stopped as he remembered that Luffy was still a 12-year-old. "Because he was caught by Arlong. We need to hurry before they kill him." "It's too late." Everyone looked over to see Johnny coming towards them. He looked tired and out of breath, as tears fell from his eyes. "We're too late," Johnny said again. "Big bro Usopp is dead. He was killed by Nami." "That's a lie," Luffy screamed. "It's true," Johnny insisted. "I saw her kill him. She was a traitor all along. She's been winning Arlong's favor so she could have treasure buried in Kokoyashi village all for herself. That woman's just a cold-hearted killer. Nami had us fooled the entire time." But Luffy would have none of it. It was only Zoro's arm around the kid's waist that kept her from charging Johnny. "That's a lie," she screamed again. "Nami ne's not a killer." "Easy, Luffy," Zoro said in a calm voice. He could feel her shaking. "This has nothing to do with Johnny. Believe whatever you want, but no, I refuse to believe that Nami ne would kill Usopp ni. She wouldn't do that to her friends." It was then another voice spoke up. "What was that about friends, Luffy?" Everyone looked over to see Nami. "Nami ne?" Luffy exclaimed in surprise, as she broke out of Zoro's grip. "What are you doing here, Luffy?" Nami asked coldly, her voice bored. But Luffy could see the pained and terrified look in Nami's eyes. "We came to get you, Nami ne," she said. "What a pest," Nami said as she jeered at the girl. "Don't make me laugh." "Damn you, witch. You killed him. I watched you kill Big Bro Usopp." "Yep, that's right. So why don't you? You're lying." All eyes turned to the youngest amongst them. Luffy stood there, her hat hiding her eyes. "What are you talking about? I can tell you're lying, Nami ne," Luffy said as she met the older woman's eyes. "What makes you think you're shaking?" It was true. All of them could see Nami's hands shaking. Nami rolled her eyes, but they could see that it was forced. "Whatever. Arlong is preparing to kill Zoro along with his entire crew. I don't care how strong you think you are. You're no match for the real monsters." She played with the staff on her shoulder, and that was when they noticed the thick bandage around her hand. Luffy caught the scent of blood. "Nami's blood. If you stay on this island, you will die." Then to Luffy she said, "This is no place for a child. So go home or continue on your quest to find the One Piece. Just leave here, you're an eyesore." But Luffy, thanks to her hearing, could hear the sadness in Nami's tone. "Nami ne," she said softly, before she closed her eyes and fell back onto the ground. "Lil sis, Luffy-chan, sleepy, Luffy-leepy?" Jin asked incredulously. "Right now?" Yosaku questioned. "Well, I'm pretty tired," she said as she yawned. "I'm not gonna butt into their problems, but I'm not leaving either. Night." Something in Nami seemed to snap. "Whatever, just go ahead and die." Line break. "So now what do we do now?" Johnny asked after Nami had left. "Staying," Zoro said, looking at the still sleeping Luffy. "Don't be stupid, big bro Zoro," Yosaku said. "Are you saying that you want to bring Nami back too?" "I have nothing to do with this," Zoro said. I don't decide who the navigator is. She does. Pointing to Luffy. Big bro, Johnny said. Then he turned to Sanji and Jin. What about you two? Jin shrugged. I'm staying. Johnny received the same answer from Sanji. I understand. Sorry, but I'm not staying. Tell Lil Sis, I'm sorry. I'm with him, Yosaku said. With that, the duo swordsmen said their goodbyes as they left. Line break. Apparently, Luffy was correct when she said that Nami didn't kill Usopp, though he was almost killed when he got in between Sanji and Zoro. It was then they were found by Kaya, who was accompanied by Nejiko, Nami's older sister, who then proceeded to tell them of Nami's past and her connection to Arlong. She explained that after Arlong had killed their mother, he had forced her to draw charts. In order to free her village, Nami made a deal with him that he'd set the village free if she gained 100 million berries. I told you, Luffy said, pointing to Zoro, Sanji and Jin, after Nejiko had left. I knew Nami wasn't a bad person. Suddenly, Luffy stiffened when the scent of blood reached her nose. What's wrong? Zoro asked, but Luffy had already taken off towards the village. After sharing confused looks, the men took off following their young captain. Luffy ran through the village, before skidding to a stop when she spotted Nami. Nami was collapsed in the middle of the path, stabbing her shoulder over and over, all the while shouting out, Arlong. Nami's paw of her shoulder screamed in pain as she brought the dagger down on that hateful mark. Arlong, she cried as she brought the dagger down again. But before she could complete the action, she found her wrist held in a small yet steady fast grip. She glanced over her shoulder, to see Luffy. Luffy said nothing as she gently took the dagger from Nami. Her face was blank, betraying no emotion. Luffy, Nami whispered softly. What do you want? You don't know anything. You don't know what has been happening in this island for the last 8 years. Luffy stayed silent. This is none of your business. I told you to leave this island. Again silence. Go away. Nami yelled as she threw dirt behind her, hitting Luffy. Go away, go away, go away. She stopped throwing dirt behind her and began to openly cry. No one's paw, Luffy, help me. It was then Luffy moved. Without saying anything, she took off her hat and firmly placed it on Nami's head. Then she wrapped the older woman in a hug. Of course I will, don't cry Nami nay. Luffy, Nami whispered. Then Luffy began to walk away, leaving Nami to Kaya. She approached her awaiting crew. They all stood waiting. Let's go, Luffy ordered. Roger. Soon they approached Arlong Park, where they saw Johnny and Yosaku were holding off the villagers at the gate. Move. Despite being surprised at the sight of the 12-year-old, the villagers moved aside. Johnny and Yosaku also moved out of the way. Luffy reeled back her fist and with one punch, the door shattered. All the fishmen were staring in disbelief as the shattered remains of the door fell to the ground, revealing a very angry 12-year-old. What the? Which one of you is Arlong? Arlong, said Arlong as he leaned back in his lawn chair. I'm Arlong. I'm Luffy, she said as she walked towards him. Luffy? Arlong repeated. And who are you? A pirate. If the fishman was surprised that a little girl had just claimed to be a pirate, he did not show it. Not so fast, brat, one of the fishmen said as he and his partner stepped in front of the girl. Luffy didn't even look at them as she unleashed a small amount of her other half's presence out of the way. Every fishman, save Arlong, took a step back in fear from the girl. And what does a pirate want with me? Suddenly, Luffy appeared in front of him, delivering a punch that sent Arlong to the other side of Arlong Park. How dare you make Nami cry? Line break. There was silence for a few seconds, before some fishmen went to attack Luffy. Back off, Sanji said as he kicked them away, not allowing them anywhere near Luffy. Don't worry about me guys, Usopp said. Ready to go as always, Usopp? Zoro said, rolling his eyes. Can you even fight Long Nose? Jin asked. All the villagers just stared in awe. That little girl just sent Arlong flying, one of the villagers said in disbelief. Hey, I remember you. You tricked me, Roronoa. Zoro, Hachi yelled. Then he screamed. It's that long nose guy. How's he still alive? If he's alive, then that bitch Nami let him live. I knew she was a traitor, Karubi snarled. Suddenly, Arlong began to laugh. A pirate, huh? You want her to navigate your ship? Sorry, but she's mine. Luffy's gaze darkened at this. You aren't worth Arlong's time, Hachi said, before he began making trumpet-like sounds with his mouth. After a few moments later, the sea cow that Sanji, Jin, Yosaku and Luffy had met earlier rose up from the water inside Arlong Park. All the villagers screamed as Momoa got closer to Hachi, only to stop when he spotted Luffy. "Oh, it's you, Mr. Sea Cow," Luffy said as she looked at her. Momoa looked a little sad. He remembered the little girl giving him food and didn't want to hurt her, or anger her, so he turned to leave. But he froze when Arlong called out to him. "Momoa, if you want to leave then leave," Arlong said, but there was a hidden threat in his tone. Momoa roared as he turned to attack Luffy. Luffy sighed before once again releasing a small amount of presence. Momoa stopped again, whimpering as he lowered himself into the water, shocking the fishmen. "Sorry, Mr. Sea Cow," Luffy said before she punched him, sending the poor cow flying. "Momoa," Hachi screamed before looking at Luffy with rage in his eyes. "Alright, you inferior human," Arlong said in a low tone. "I've had about all I can tolerate from the likes of you." "Lord Arlong, please calm down," Kureha said. "You'll destroy Arlong Park if you go crazy." "We're more than enough to beat the brat and her friends," Chu said. "Let us kill these weaklings," Hachi yelled. The other fishmen roared in agreement. "Alright," said Arlong as he grinned. "Jin ni," Luffy said. Jin grinned, bringing out his tonfas and began to swing them in circles. "Hey! One human against all of us," one fishman said in a cocky tone. "I'll take care of him." Then he lunged. Right as he swung his fist, Jin ducked to avoid the attack before swinging his tonfa around, smashing the fishman's head into the concrete. Everyone stared as he raised a bloody tonfa up with a dissatisfied frown. "These guys are a threat?" he asked, as he slowly swung his tonfa around. "Don't make me laugh." "Human trash," the other fishmen shouted as they all charged at Jin. But they were quickly dealt with by the tonfa user. "He's beating them up like they're nothing," the doctor said as Kureha slowly walked up to Jin. "Seems it'll take more to do away with you," he said. "After I get rid of you, the brat and that bitch Nami is next." "Hold it," Sanji said as he moved between Kureha and Jin. "I won't stand by and let some fish freak insult a beautiful lady. Or attack Luffy-chan." "A lady?" Kureha asked. "Huh? You'd die for some stupid girl and a brat? That's a laugh." Sanji removed his cigarette and glared at Kureha. "One more insult and you're sushi asshole," he said in a dark tone. "Isn't chivalry from a pirate a little fake?" With that the two were facing off. Hachi glared at Zoro. "You tricked me earlier. He attacked my brethren, then conned me into giving you a ride." "That's old news, Octo Freak," Zoro said as he grabbed the hilt of his blade with his hand. "The tables have turned. You're not the hunters anymore, fish freak. You're the hunted." Suddenly Luffy screamed in pain, causing everyone to turn to her. Her left leg and right arm were bleeding. While Jin was fighting, Chu had fired 2 water shots at his unprotected back. Luffy had seen this, and had taken the attack instead. "Die brat!" screamed 2 fishmen as they charged the girl. "Luffy!" Jin cried. "Exploding star!" Usopp yelled in anger as he fired 2 exploding pellets at the fishmen, sending them flying away from Luffy. "You're that long-nosed human that attacked Arlong before," Chu said, as Usopp slowly turned to him with sweat running down his face. "This time when we kill you," he said, "it'll be for good." Usopp shrieked as he ran past the villagers with Chu in pursuit. "I've had enough games," Arlong said as he stood. He glared at Luffy with a dark look, which she returned with a growl. "I swear, I'll kill every single one of you inferior humans." Line break. The villagers watched from the broken gate, as the pirate crew that was apparently led by a 12-year-old girl fought against the fishmen. Johnny and Yosaku were guarding the gate to keep them from getting themselves killed. Jin was among them as Luffy had ordered him to stay near the villagers. The fight between Zoro and Hachi were going well, until the wound Zoro had received from Mihawk began to open. His wound from Hawkeye hasn't healed yet. It'd take half a year at most for it to finish healing, yet he's moving around like it's nothing. "That idiot," Sanji said, before he was knocked through the wall by Kureha's fist. "You should never take your eyes off your opponent. Brother Cook." Shahahaha. Arlong laughed. Did you humans really think that you had a chance? Why don't you join them? He shouted as he lunged at Luffy. Luffy's step sided the attack, before shoving Arlong's head into the concrete. Just shut up and watch. Sure enough, one by one Sanji and Zoro defeated their opponent. No way, thought Nijiko as she stared at the scene. They're actually defeating the fishmen. That's it, Arlong roared as he flung Luffy off him. I've had enough of you vermin hurting my brethren. Arlong, everyone turned to see Nami glaring at Arlong. If it isn't Nami, what are you doing here? I've come to kill you. Line break, sha ha ha ha. Kill me. How many attempts have you made to take my head? Face it, Nami. You'll be nothing but my cartographer for the rest of your days. Shut up, Sanji said as he and Zoro stood. Both were bleeding heavily, but still able to fight. Pitiful humans. I don't need to even touch you to beat you, Arlong said as he raised his hand, which was full of water. Then he threw the water at them, but Luffy appeared between them. The water shots splashing harmlessly against her scales. I'm your opponent, Luffy said, growling as her body shook. Do you know what the difference between you and me? If you mean that you're an egotistical jerk, species, Arlong yelled as he tried to bite her. Only for his teeth to shatter when he bit down on scales. Now he's lost his teeth, Usopp shouted. Fool, Arlong said as he grew new teeth. How'd he get new teeth? Johnny asked. I'm a shark. My teeth naturally grow back, Arlong said before he began to pull his teeth out and grow news. Then without warning he lunged. Luffy managed to dodge one set of teeth, but not the other. She screamed when the teeth pierced her side, but with a quick punch, Arlong was forced to let go. Luffy grunted as she pulled out the teeth. Luffy, the water, Usopp shouted. She turned just in time to avoid Arlong, who came out of the water like a torpedo. You're just prolonging your end, Arlong said as he shot toward her. But by now Luffy had had enough. As Arlong neared her, she raised her scaled cover arm, and punched Arlong in the face, shattering his nose, sending him into the Arlong Park building. Luffy-chan, Kaya called out in concern as the girl swayed. Stay back, she cried out, as Arlong came out of the building with a giant saw-like blade. His eyes now resembled those of a sea king when they snap. The saw blade! Nami screamed. Arlong charged at the girl who dared to challenge him. He brought the blade down, forcing Luffy to jump to the upper level of the building, but Arlong kept coming. Finally, they were on the top floor when Luffy jumped through the window next to her. She all but collapsed on the floor, her body shaking so badly she was vibrating. Her vision blurred due to the blood loss. When her vision cleared, she noticed that she was in a room filled with tons of paper. You have nowhere to go now, human, Arlong said as he walked through the broken window. What's with this room? It's full of paper. This isn't ordinary paper. This is the map room where that girl draws her maps. Nami's room? All of these are sea maps that Nami drew for me. A pause. Impressive, isn't it? Her 8 years of work, my treasure. We know the sea like the back of our hands, but it's hard for us to make maps without a skilled cartographer. That girl is a genius. The accuracy of her charts are beyond comparison. Luffy continued to look around. Her talent exists to service fishmen forever. Nami belongs to us. She is my companion. Companion? Luffy repeated softly. Then her eyes narrowed, flashing gold. I don't care what you say, because Nami's our navigator. Arlong chuckled. Oh, you want her to navigate that pathetic ship of yours? You have no idea what a waste of talent that would be. How many people can draw such accurate maps? The young lady has a gift. Luffy's attention was drawn to a nearby desk, as a pen suddenly fell off it. Luffy carefully picked it up, only to tense when she caught the scent of Nami's blood. This pen, it's stained with blood, Luffy said softly as her anger grew. But Arlong paid no mind. For me to rule the world, Nami's maps are absolutely vital. He raised his saw blade to the girl's neck. She will keep drawing maps for the sake of my ambitions. No one will be able to stand in my way. The world will be mine. The first step is this island, then we'll move to the whole East Blue. I say, you think you can use that girl as well I do? Luffy tensed. Her other half's presence that had been present ever so slightly, suddenly vanished. She very carefully placed the pen on the floor before her, before very gently took hold of one of the blades on the shark's saw. Her head was down, hair hiding her eyes. Then without warning, she shattered the blade. As her anger soared, the presence returned full force, and when she looked up, the look in her eyes sent a shiver of fear down Arlong's spine. "Use!" Luffy roared as she shifted into her full dragon form. An ancient! Arlong cried in panic as he came face to face with an angry dragon. Line break outside. Everyone stared at the room Luffy and Arlong had disappeared into. They wondered what was happening when they felt. Only those who had seen Luffy shift before recognized it. The young dragon was pissed. Then without a warning, Arlong Park begins to shake. They all watched as it began to crumble with a deafening roar. What happened? Who won? Everyone stared from outside the gate for anything to happen. Then, they all watched as a young dragon emerged from the rubble. The dragon stood about 6 feet tall and 12 feet long. Along the dragon's back laid 2 wings that stretched about 16 feet wide if unfurled. The dragon's sapphire scales shimmered in the sunlight. An unconscious Arlong was held in its claws. Despite never seeing her full dragon form, Zoro, Sanji, Jin, Kaya, and Usopp knew without a doubt that it was Luffy. Nami stood there in shock. So she really is a dragon. "Nami nay!" shouted a voice in their heads, surprising many. "You'll always be my friend." Nami just stared with wide eyes before she won. Lil sis won. As they cheered, the dragon had shifted back into a tired, bloodied little girl. Nami was there to catch the young girl as she swayed. "Thank you, Luffy-chan," Nami said as she returned the hat. "That's enough celebrating," came a voice. Everyone looked to see Captain Nezumi and a few Marines behind him aiming their guns at them. "I didn't think that a bunch of no-name pirates would defeat Arlong. But this is good news. All the money in Arlong Park belongs to me now." "You greedy son of a," Luffy-chan, "mind your language." "Fine," Luffy said as she stared ruefully at Kaya. Although she busted into laughter when Zoro, Sanji, and Jin beat the Marines to a bloody pulp. "Line break, I'm a captain of the Marines." Nezumi mumbled in pain as he and his fellow Marines laid in crumpled heap, bleeding, broken and crying with all the Straw Hat men standing behind them. "Lay one finger on me." "He still doesn't get it," Sanji said. Nami, after handing an exhausted Luffy over to Jin, who was the least injured in the group, walked up to the Marine with her staff in hand. "This is for trying to take my money," she said before she smacked him with her staff. Nezumi actually skipped across the water before sinking. "Nice shot, sis," Nijiko said. "Hit him 1,000 more times," Genzo said as Ratface, Luffy's new nickname for him, came up to breathe. Nami walked over to him and started pulling the whiskers on his face. "I'm only going to say this once, so listen carefully," she said in a calm voice. "The money in Arlong Park belongs to the villagers, and you're not to touch the money in my mother's tangerine grove. You're going to clean up this mess and take care of Arlong and his men." "Right. I understand," Nezumi squeaked out. "Good, now get off our island," she shouted. Nezumi and the other Marines swam off a bit before turning around. "You'll pay for this. You there, the brat in the straw hat? Your name is Monkey D. Luffy, correct?" "That's right," Luffy said. "Mark my words. You'll get what's coming to you," he shouted before he swam away. As soon as they left, the villagers busted out in cheers. Arlong Park is no more. Line break. It had been 4 days since Luffy and her friends left the island with Nami in tow. Johnny and Yosaku had taken up Luffy's offer to join. Also accompanying them was Nami's sister Nijiko. When asked, Nijiko said that she wanted to keep an eye on Nami, not that she didn't trust Luffy to do so, but she was still a child. Luffy wasn't bothered by this, she was just ecstatic that she had another big sister. Although Luffy was currently hiding from an angry Zoro, who was covered in glitter, she had been bored, and thus Zoro became a target of the little brat. "Where is she?" Zoro asked as he stormed into the kitchen, looking for the little prankster. "What do you want, Mosshead?" Sanji said, though he broke out into laughter when he saw the glitter. "Where's Luffy, curly brow?" "She's not in here," Sanji answered calmly. Suddenly a loud scream could be heard from the deck. Line break. Nami stared horrified at the poster in her hands. Luffy on the other hand was jumping for joy. "Yay," she cheered, "my first bounty." Sure enough, on the poster was the smiling face of one Monkey D. Luffy. Wanted dead or alive. Worth 38 million berries. Chapter finished. I hope the fighting was okay. It took me a while to decide how I wanted it to go. The Marines will be as clueless as usual. Ratface didn't see Luffy in her dragon form. I couldn't help but have Zoro be run over by the boat. That's one of my favorite parts in the canon. Luffy considers it payback for Zoro after he ignored her order back on Baroque. I will say this, if Luffy ever teams up with Thatch, all hell will break loose. Wonder who'd win in a prank war, Luffy or Thatch. Next chapter is the reaction of Luffy's bounty. The Hawk was watching in amusement as Shanks just gaped like a fish out of water. He had just shown the man a recently made wanted poster of his sea-loving niece he'd run into. The man's crew began to back away as hockey began to pour out in waves off the red-headed captain. Luffy. Line break. Marco watched with lazy interest as Ace began to swear more cuss words than even Marco knew himself. Luffy was the last eligible thing heard from the seething man. Marco looked down at the wanted poster that he'd snatched so it didn't catch on fire, which said, "Wanted dead or alive Straw Hat Luffy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Bounty. 38 million belly. Good thing wanted posters don't tell you anything about her abilities." Marco thought with a sigh as his pants began to vibrate. He pulled out a den. "Yes," he said over Ace's yelling. "Hey Marco, how's Ace? Hey Vista, where's Oyaji?" As for Ace, well, he's about as fine as you could be when your 12-year-old sister just got herself into as much trouble as humanly possible. "Ace, sit down," Marco demanded as he pulled the 2nd Division commander down. "My God, you're gonna set the boat on fire, and I'm not saving your ass." "I was afraid of that. We're doing better on our end." Oyaji is stuck between swearing up a storm and laughing his head off at how fast the brat's going. "We need to find the brat before the wrong people find out what she is." Came the replay. Laughter and swearing could be heard on the other end. Yep, Ace's sister was gonna have them all going prematurely gray. "Ace, your sis is so dead." Line break. The Top Hat Pirates watched in terror as their captain stormed through the ship, swearing up a storm. "I can't believe this. That girl is so dead when I get my hands on her. I pity the captain's little sister." "Me too." Line break. Law didn't know what to expect when he got the wanted poster, which was given to him by a panicked Beppo. He certainly didn't plan on seeing his sister's face on the poster. He hadn't even known that she'd run away. But unlike his brothers, who were probably swearing up a storm, Law couldn't help but wonder why the girl had left home to begin with. Luffy Yaw wouldn't leave on a whim, he thought. Something happened to make her leave. He smirked as he imagined a certain marine hero on his medical table. Line break. Monkey D. Dragon looked at the piece of paper in his hands. Dead center of the poster was his 12-year-old daughter, who he hadn't since he handed her over to his father after Lucy had died. Probably not his brightest move. Though he wasn't really surprised, since the moment she was born, she showed the same personality traits as her mother and himself. She was someone who desired true freedom. Piracy was the greatest chance of freedom his little dragon could get. He was just surprised that she's tried to do it at the age of 12. He wondered what his idiotic father had done to cause this. He could almost see the man's reaction. "I think it's time to pay my daughter a well-overdue visit." Line break. Sengoku. "What is this? My little princess has a bounty on her head," Garp cried as he actually used the door to Sengoku's office. "It appears that another one of your grandchildren had become a pirate. You must be so proud." Garp just sat in a corner to sulk. "I really question your sanity, Garp." Line break. Luffy had been running around on deck, playing tag with Johnny, Yosaku and Usopp when she suddenly froze. This did not go unnoticed. "What's wrong, Luffy-chan?" Kaya asked. "I just have a bad feeling that I just got several people really angry that I shouldn't have." Zoro, Nami, Nijiko, Jin and Sanji dismissed it, while Usopp and the others assured her that nothing was going to happen anytime soon. "Yay! We're here!" Luffy cheered when they reached the port in Loguetown. "The town where Gold Roger was both born and killed," Johnny said. "Let's go," Luffy yelled, before jumping ship. "Luffy, hold on," Usopp said. "Johnny, Yosaku, can you go with her?" Both nodded before running to catch up with the 12-year-old. "I'm gonna go pick up some food," Sanji said. "I'll look for supplies," Usopp said. I'll go get some medical supplies. Kaya said. I need some new swords, Zoro said. I'll lend you some money at 300% interest, Nami said with an innocent smile. Don't do it, Zoro. Nijiko thought, knowing what her sister was up to. I'll go take a walk. Jin mumbled as he left. You okay, Jin? Nijiko asked as she followed Nami. Just need to clear my head, he said, before they walked off. Line break, come on, Johnny ni, Yosaku ni, Luffy said as she ran through the streets. Both men chuckled. Slow down, lil sis, Johnny said. Where are we going? Yosaku asked. I want to see the execution platform. Why do you? Johnny started to say, before Luffy literally seemed to vanish. Line break. Luffy didn't really want to leave Johnny and Yosaku behind, but they were being so slow. She wanted to see where her Uncle Roger was executed. Besides, any half-decent pirate had to visit that place. Only one problem. She was now hopelessly and severely lost. She couldn't use her nose as there were way too many smells for her to identify. At some point she found herself in front of an old tavern. Curious, she entered. Line break. After visiting the tavern, Luffy was once again wandering the streets lost. Finally she came across an older man with light gray hair with 2 cigars in his mouth. For some reason he smelled like smoke. Excuse me, mister, she asked, walking up to him. Can you please tell me where the execution platform is? Execution platform? Yeah, I think I'm lost. Where are your parents? I came with my big brothers and sisters, she said, but I got separated. Sure thing, kid, said the man. Just follow the smoke. She gave him a big smile. Thank you, mister. Line break. A few minutes later, Luffy was now standing on top of the execution platform. Wow, she said in amazement as she looked around. So this is what Uncle Roger saw before he died. Hey, kid. Luffy jumped at the sudden voice. She looked over the edge to see a police officer staring up at her. Get down from there, he said through a loudspeaker. Why? This is a historical landmark under the preservation of the world government, so get down from there right now. Naturally, Luffy responded like any child would, after being told to do something that they didn't want to do. No, I'm not playing, I will arrest you if you don't come down. Fine, she yelled with an evil grin. But first you have to smile and say the magic word. Before the officer could say anything, he was suddenly knocked out by an iron mace. The wielder of the mace looked up and smiled warmly at Luffy. She wore a very revealing outfit with a large hat. Luffy caught the scent of perfume and soap. Long time no see, Luffy-chan. I've been looking for you. Who are you, pretty Nate-chan? Luffy asked. You're telling me you don't remember me? Suddenly Luffy felt a pair of handcuffs on her wrists, before she was shoved down on the platform by a stalk. Straw Hat Luffy. It's time for your flashy execution. Today your head flashily rolls. Luffy looked up to see Buggy the clown holding a sword, laughing like a moron. This is not what I agreed on, Buggy, shouted the pretty lady. Buggy glared at the woman. No, it's not, Alvida. It's what I agreed on. Hey Bugsby. What did you put around my wrists? Luffy asked. Sea stone cuffs. Buggy declared proudly. They're one of the 2 common weaknesses of all devil fruit users. Are you sure they work, Buffoon? She said, getting his name wrong again on purpose. Of course they do. You're a devil fruit user after all. So that's why they don't work, she thought. Now it's time for your flashy execution, Brad. Buggy said as he raised the sword. Any last words? Luffy was quiet for a moment before taking a deep breath. I am the one WHO will be the queen of the pirates. Buggy just laughed. If that's all you have to say, Brad, then let's get this started. Stop the execution. Everyone looked to see a very angry Zoro, Sanji, Jin, Johnny and Yosaku. After being told that she'd been missing, the men had been looking for Luffy. After hearing about the execution, they ran to the square. Right now, they all shouted. Zoro ni, Sanji ni, Jin ni, Yosaku ni, Johnny ni, Luffy shouted. Looks like all your goofing around finally caught up with you. Huh, Luffy? Zoro said with a smirk. This really isn't the best time to make jokes, big bro, Johnny said. Yeah, Yosaku agreed. They've got Lil Sis up there ready to kill her. Like we'd let that happen, Sanji said as he puffed on a cigarette. How'd she get trapped anyway? Jin asked. Buggy just sneered as he raised the sword. So you're here at last, Zoro, pity you're just a tad bit too late. Destroy the platform, Zoro ordered as he and the others charged. Right. Luffy watched as her big brothers fought the Buggy pirates, desperate to make sure that their captain didn't die prematurely. However, even she knew that they'd never make it in time. Thunder boomed from the sky above. Zoro ni, Sanji ni, Usopp ni, Nami ne, Jin ni, Nijiko ne, Kaya ne, Johnny ni, Yosaku ni, she said, her voice echoing across the plaza. A large peaceful smile appeared on her face. Sorry, I'm dead, she said as the sword came down. No, don't say that, lil sis, Captain. The blade of the sword was just inches from her neck, when lightning shot down from the sky catching the metal blade, setting the platform ablaze as it twisted and fell. Lightning now filled the sky as it began to rain heavily. Everyone stared, transfixed at what they'd just witnessed. Zoro, Sanji, Jin, Yosaku, and Johnny just stared at the ruined platform in utter astonishment. Buggy laid on the ground, fried extra crispy from the lightning. Luffy on the other hand was completely unharmed. She reached to pick up her fallen hat. What? How? Johnny stuttered as both he and Yosaku fell on their asses in shock. The tonfas fell from Jin's hands as the cigarette fell from Sanji's mouth. Divine intervention? Sanji asked. Stop talking nonsense. The Marines are here, we gotta go. He's right, Yosaku said as he and Johnny stood, before they started to run. Before following them, Luffy turned to Alvida. Why were you looking for me, Alvida ne? Luffy asked. Alvida gave the girl a warm sisterly smile. I wanted to ask you if I could join your crew, Luffy-chan. Luffy studied the woman in front of her for a moment. A big grin appeared on her face. She grabbed the woman's arm, much to Alvida's surprise, and began to pull her along. Zoro and the others just sighed. This wasn't gonna be the first time the child did this. We can have the introductions later. We have to get back to the ship. With that they all took off running towards the docks. Somewhere along the way Luffy got separated from her friends, when she was suddenly knocked down. She looked up to see Smoker, whose weight was making it very hard for her to breathe. Didn't help when his jute was all but crushing her throat. Get, me? Luffy tried to say. Sorry kid, but you're a pirate, and if you want to get to the Grand Line, you gotta go through me. She was about 2 seconds from smacking him, but someone else beat her to it. Before he could do anything, Smoker suddenly found himself smashed up against the wall. Luffy gasped, taking some much-needed air. She looked up to see a man wearing a long, dark green cloak. The left side of his was covered with a red tribal tattoo. He was currently glaring at Smoker, who was still trying to get his bearings. For some reason, he seemed familiar to Luffy but she couldn't remember from where. When Smoker turned to him into the wall, his eyes widened in surprise at who he saw. It's you, he never got to finish, before a crushing pressure seemed to bear down on his mind, knocking him unconscious. Luffy stared in awe as the man knocked Smoker out without even touching him. Cool, the man's dark gaze landed her, but she didn't feel scared, she felt safe. After few seconds, the look softened. You should go catch up to your friends, child, said the man in a hoarse voice. Suddenly, Luffy found herself being swept up by a powerful gust of wind. Before she knew what had happened, she found herself being placed gently on the deck of the Mary, surprising her nakama. But soon they had set sail, leaving Loguetown far behind them. Luffy glanced back at the island before it vanished from sight. Who was that? Chapter done. Luffy knows who her father is, but the last time Dragon had seen her was when she was 2. So she really doesn't remember him. Nami ne? Luffy shouted over the wind. There's a light up ahead. Is that the lighthouse? Yup. That's our guiding light, said Nami. That light points to the entrance of the Grand Line, said Jin. So the Grand Line is over there, Luffy said in a soft voice. This was the moment she'd waited for, even if she did leave early. Never thought we'd be heading to the Grand Line, Johnny said with a smile. Yosaku nodded. I'm going back to that sea again, Jin said with a grim look. Don't worry Jin ni, Luffy said as she hugged him, with a large smile. This is gonna be fun. He couldn't help but smile. Hey, Sanji said as he rolled a big barrel onto the deck. Let's mark this occasion with some words. I agree, Usopp said as he let go of the mast that he'd been holding for dear life. Yay! Luffy cheered in excitement as they gathered around the barrel. I'm going to find the all blue, Sanji said as he placed a foot on the barrel. I'm gonna be the queen of the pirates, Luffy said, placing hers up as well. I'm going to the world's greatest swordsman. We're going to be the best swordsman duo the whole world has ever seen. I'm going to be a brave warrior of the sea. I'm going to see the world and help people. I'm going to draw a map of the world. I'm going to see that your dream comes true, sis. I'm going to captivate the world with my beauty. Everyone then looked to Jin, whose eyes were shadowed as he stared at the barrel. Then he smiled before placing his own foot up there. To never run from the Grand Line again. To the Grand Line, Luffy yelled as they all raised their feet and brought them down on the barrel to smash it. Yeah, line break, you dumb whale, Luffy shouted as she continued to stomp her foot on the whale's back. Spit out my friends right now. The trip over the mountain was very exciting, though when Luffy had used the cannon in an attempt to stop the ship from crashing into the ginormous whale that had been blocking their path, things didn't end so well. First off, the cannon hadn't been enough to slow them down, thus resulting in the figurehead being broken off as they hit the whale. This resulted in a dragon who was very angry that her special seat had been destroyed. Second, the crew watched in horror as their 12-year-old captain punched the whale in the eye. This resulted in an angry whale who just swallowed the ship, leaving Luffy outside. Thus resulting in the 12-year-old dragon's current stomping fit, though she was forced to stop when the whale went underwater. Thankfully, Luffy had discovered a metal hatch on the whale's back, much to her confusion. Line break. The swallowed crew members were currently staring around them calmly. We just got swallowed by a whale, right? Usopp asked. No doubt about it, big bro Usopp, said Yosaku. If that's the case, Jin said, then why are we back outside? All around them seemed to be the outside world. There were clouds, the sky, the sea, even an island. Is this a dream? Johnny asked. An illusion, maybe? Nami suggested. Suddenly, Kaya screamed as a giant squid rose from the sea. Giant squid. But then they watched as the squid was suddenly harpooned. Someone's here, Zoro said through gritted teeth. Hope he's friendly, Sanji said with a smirk. Where's Luffy-chan? Usopp said between tears. I want to go home, Nami said, also in tears. They watched as the now dead squid was slowly reeled towards the island. Line break. Since when do whales have doors and hallway? Luffy asked to no one as she looked around her. The young dragon was currently standing in a lighted iron hallway. An iron hallway that seemed to tilt, causing the girl to lose her footing. She cried out in surprise as she went tumbling down the hallway, bouncing around like a rubber ball until she ended up in a large tunnel. Not wanting to be bounced around again, Luffy's dragon wings appeared on her back, and despite being a little wobbly, she was able to hover above the ground. Not knowing what to do, she started flying down the tunnel. She would have swam, but there was a slight foul fish smell coming from the water below. Owie, she said when she flew into the ceiling. I need to work on my flying. Due to being a young dragon, Luffy was still learning to fly. Her brothers were unable to teach her, even then she was too young to fly. She tried to teach herself after she turned 12, that resulted in many crashes or dips in the sea. It didn't help when a few months later, she was captured by slavers. After that she really had no time to practice flying. So it wasn't really surprising when she was unable to stop herself from crashing into two strangers, who were standing in front of a large metal door. One stranger was a middle-aged man wearing a large crown, with the number 9 written on his cheeks. The other one was a young woman with long, wavy blue hair tied in a tight ponytail. As Luffy crashed into them, she caught the scent of perfume and sand. The force of the crash had forced the doors open, sending them flying into open air. Luffy smiled when she saw her friends, who gaped at the sudden sight of their captain. Guys, she cried out, just before splashing into the stomach acid below. Luffy, Zoro shouted, before he, Johnny and Yosaku jumped in after them. Line break. Are you okay, Luffy-chan? Kaya asked, after they'd fished the three out. Luffy was currently on her back, getting her breath back, her wings gone. I'm fine, Kaya-ne, she said, though she winced. The spot where her wings appeared throbbed with pain. I really need to keep practicing, she thought as she sat up. Luffy-chan, but she shook her head, glancing at the two strangers. Zoro turned to the two strangers. Now then, we saved your lives for the time being, he said irritably. You better talk and make it quick. Mr. 9, these heathens are pirates, the woman whispered. Yes, that's painfully obvious, Miss Wednesday. But if we speak to their humanity and compassion, they show. We can hear every word you're saying, Usopp said, as Luffy stood next to Alvida, looking at the two. While she didn't trust them, there was something about the woman, Miss Wednesday, that seemed different from her partner. You parasites are still here. Everyone looked up to see an old man standing up on a small iron platform next to the gate that the three had come crashing out of. He had a rather stocky and muscular body. Though the one thing that drew one's attention was the yellow petal-like things on his head. And he was glaring angrily at Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. For the last time, as long as I draw breath, you will not harm Laboon. Suddenly, the two were laughing as they pulled out bazookas. You can't bully us into abandoning our mission, Miss Wednesday said. We were sent to hunt this whale, and that's what we're gonna do, Mr. 9 said as the two fired. Luffy covered her ears. I won't let you, the old man yelled, as he jumped into the line of fire. The Straw Hats watched as the man fell, burnt and injured, into the pool of acid. Your defiance is pointless. Make no mistake, this hulking beast will provide food for our town. The two started to laugh again. But Luffy had had enough. She appeared behind them and knocked them out. What was that for? Usopp asked. They were hurting my ears. Luffy replied, rubbing her ears. After they fished out the old man, whose name was Crocus, he invited them to his island. So who are these two anyway? Nami asked. Just some thugs, who want to kill Laboon for food. Crocus said as he started to read his newspaper in a lawn chair. Laboon? Nami asked. It's the whale's name, Luffy said from her place up in a palm tree that was on the island. Crocus looked at the girl. And how'd you know that? You said it earlier. Crocus looked at her for a moment. Well, you're right, he said. Laboon is a rare species of whale called an island whale that comes from the West Blue. If he's from the West Blue, Nijiko asked, then how'd he get here? Croc told them how he came down Reverse Mountain with a group of pirates. The pirates had decided to leave Laboon to Crocus, as the Grand Line would be too dangerous, promising they'd be back. That was 50 years ago, he finished sadly. 50 years, Sanji said in shock. So that's why he sounds so sad, Luffy thought. He's been waiting that long? Usopp asked, jaw dropped. Anyone would go crazy waiting that long, Nami said. Soon, they were sailing through the canal inside Laboon. Hey, Mr. Crocus, Luffy asked. What's with this canal? Just a doctor's playful mind at work. You're a doctor, Crocus-san? Kaya asked. That's right. A doctor, huh? Luffy said, before she smiled. Hey, mister, why not join us? But Crocus shook his head. I'm too old, line break. Once they were back outside, Crocus began to tell them more about Laboon's past, about how he kept ramming his head against the red line in hopes of destroying it. That was too much for Johnny and Yosaku, who both started to cry at such a sad tale. I'm all Laboon has, the scars on his head are deep. His heart deeper. If not me to tend to him, then who? It's a strange system of friendship, nutted works. It was then Jin noticed something. Hey, guys, everyone looked at him. Where's Luffy? It was then they realized that their young captain was nowhere in sight. RRRRAHHHHH. Everyone looked to see Luffy running up Laboon with what looked like a giant mast. Then they realized it was a mast, or more accurately the Mary's mast. It was then they made a new rule. Never take your eyes off of the crazy, hyperactive 12-year-old half-dragon known as Luffy. With mast in hand, Luffy ran up onto the whale's nose. She made her way over to the scars, where a newly made cut was still bleeding. Gum gum flower ARANGEMENT. She yelled as she planted the mast into the cut, causing Laboon cry out in pain. What the hell are you doing? Her entire crew screamed. But Luffy paid no mind, as she was hanging onto the mast as Laboon tried to throw her off. Now angry, Laboon jumped out of the sea and slammed the girl right into the red line with his body. But Luffy got right back up. She gave Laboon a cocky grin, showing her canines, which further ticked the whale off. Laboon moved to smash her, but she jumped out of the way. "Gum gum pistol," she yelled as she punched him in the eye. Laboon responded in kind, by head-butting the girl into the lighthouse on the coast. "It's a draw," Luffy yelled after a few more minutes, surprising Laboon. The whale stopped in his tracks. Everyone stared at the girl as she sat up and smiled. "I'm strong, but I bet you knew that," she said. "I can tell when someone wants to fight." "Well, I'll fight you if you want. Your family used to spare with you, didn't they? Well, I can rival anything they threw at you. After my friends and I travel the Grand Line, we'll come back." Tears were now forming in the whale's eyes. "When we do, you better be ready for a rematch." Line break. After painting a messy version of their flag on Laboon's forehead, the now messy Luffy was heavily scolded by Kaya, before she went with Alvida to get washed off. Nami went to coordinate their traveling plans. Negico and Jin went with Kaya to check on supplies. Sanji went to make lunch. Usopp went to fix the mast. Johnny and Yosaku went to help Usopp. And Zoro was sleeping. Everything was relatively quiet, until Nami let out a massive shriek. Everyone, save Alvida and Luffy, rushed over. "What's wrong, Nami Swan?" Sanji asked. "The compass is broken," she exclaimed. "It won't stop spinning." "We had the same problem," Jin said. Luffy, now clean, came out with her hands over ears, followed by Alvida. "What was that for, Nami Nay?" she asked. "There's nothing wrong with your compass," Crocus said, as he began to tell them why compasses don't work on the Grand Line. Instead they needed a log pose. "Do you mean this, mister?" Luffy asked as she pulled out the object she'd found from the two people from earlier. "Yes," Crocus said. "Without a log pose, it's impossible to travel the Grand Line." "Where do you get this?" Nami asked as she took the log pose. "Those two weirdas left it on the ship." As if summoned by magic, the two people from earlier appeared, gasping for breath. Luffy stood near Zoro as Sanji helped Miss Wednesday. "What's wrong?" he asked, as the two asked for a ride to Whiskey Peak. "Don't trust them," was her response. "Is it okay to let them on the ship?" Zoro was taking no chances if they weren't. She studied them before she nodded. Zoro relaxed slightly. He refused to let his guard down around people Luffy had deemed they couldn't be trusted. "We'll just keep an eye on them," said Alvida, who'd been close enough to have overheard what had been said. Luffy and Zoro nodded. Line break. After saying goodbye to Crocus and Laboon, the crew plus the two guests had set sail for Whiskey Peak. "This weather makes no sense," Nami said as she, Negico, Kaya, and Alvida wore winter clothing inside the cabin with their two guests. Jin and Sanji were outside shoveling the snow that hadn't been there a second ago. Zoro was napping. Johnny was up in the crow's nest. And Yosaku was keeping an eye out for trouble. Usopp was playing in the snow with Luffy. The young dragon was laughing as she played in the snow. She looked quite cute in the winter clothing that Nami had bought back at Loguetown. "Behold, Mr. Snowman," Luffy said as she finished making a funny-looking snowman. "Nice job, lil sis," Johnny said from the crow's nest, as he and Yosaku clapped her hands. "Ha ha ha," Usopp said. "Amateur. Behold, my masterpiece. The Snow Queen." He stepped aside, revealing a woman perfectly sculpted out of the snow. All of them clapped before Luffy grinned mischievously. After making a snowball, she threw it at the Snow Queen, knocking off its head. "Hey!" Usopp screamed at her, before nailing Luffy's snowman with a snowball of his own. Soon the two were throwing snowballs at each other, while Johnny and Yosaku laughed as they watched. That is until a snowball nailed them both in the face. They looked to see Luffy and Usopp grinning at them. Johnny and Yosaku looked at each other before they both started chucking snowballs at the two. "This means war. How can they be so energetic?" Nami asked, as she and the other women watched from the window. "At least they're keeping Luffy entertained," Kaya said. "It's never a dull moment," Negico said. Suddenly, Luffy came into the cabin. "Nami nay, Negico nay, Alvida nay, Kaya nay," she said. "Come play with us." The women couldn't help but awe at how cute the little girl was. "Maybe later, Luffy," Nami said. "I'll play with you, Luffy-chan," Kaya said. "Me too," Alvida said. Luffy cheered as she pulled the two outside. Nami and Negico couldn't help but laugh. "My lovely ladies, are you happy with my shoveling?" Sanji asked with hearts in his eyes. Yes, said Nijiko. Keep shoveling, Nami said, causing the man to shovel faster. Hey, throw the snow off the ship, Jin shouted as he noticed Sanji throwing it everywhere. One pile hit Luffy, causing the girl to start throwing snowballs at Sanji and Jin. Soon all 8 were going at it with their little snow war. Even Zoro got pulled into it, when Luffy quietly approached the sleeping man with a pile of snow in her hands. The other 7 laughed when said man woke up to a face full of snow. Think you could get away with that? He said to a laughing Luffy. She squealed when he playfully lunged for her. Line break. Soon they'd arrived at Whiskey Peak, where they were welcomed with open arms. Welcome to our town, pirates, shouted the townspeople. What? Most of the crew asked. Everyone looked at the crowd with different expressions. Sanji was swooning at all the girls. Jin raised an eyebrow. Usopp was blowing kisses to everyone. Johnny and Yosaku looked puzzled. Nami and Nijiko looked skeptical, while Kaya looked confused. Zoro and Alvida both kept a straight face, while Luffy stood next to Head Gold. When they made it to port, they were greeted by a tall man with very curly hair. Greetings, pirates, he said with a smile. Welcome to our little town. My name is Igarapoy. I'm the mayor of this town. Hi, mister, Luffy said as she stepped away from Zoro. I'm Luffy. For a split second the man's expression changed, but then it went back to a smile. We thrive on making booze and music, as you'll soon see, he said. Smiles and liquor are abundant here, so we ask for permission to throw a party to celebrate your arrival and hear the tales of your adventures. Let us party. Everyone cheered in agreement. None of them noticed 3 of the Straw Hats talking in whispers. This is a trap, said Jin. Luffy-chan doesn't trust them either, Alvida said. Jin raised an eyebrow at this. So what's the plan? Well, Zoro said, they did say to enjoy ourselves. The 3 looked at each other with identical smirks. Line break later that night, Mr. 8 was meeting with Miss Monday, Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. Why couldn't we've ambushed them at the harbor? Miss Monday said. I'm just glad they didn't ask for whale meat. This caused an argument with Mr. 9 and Miss Sunday. Quiet all of you, Mr. 8 said as he pulled out Luffy's wanted poster. Take a look at this. What? The trio shouted in disbelief. 38 million berries. For that little brat? Mr. 9 said. Don't be stupid. Looks can be deceiving. Mr. 8 said. That goes for all of you. Sorry, Miss Monday said. No worries, they're trapped, said Mr. 8. What should we do with the rest of the crew, Miss Wednesday? Kill them, said Mr. 9. All we need is the brat. For a split second, Miss Wednesday's face changed into regret. Now hold up, someone said. What makes you think that we'll just let you take our captain? The 4 looked up to see Zoro, Johnny, Yosaku, Alvida, Jin and Nijiko standing on a rooftop, looking down at them. All 6 were armed and angry. A few of the townspeople ran out the door. Mr. 8, Miss Monday. A few of the pirates escaped when we weren't looking. You little rats, Mr. 8 said with a scowl. You should have stayed asleep. A good swordsman never lets his guard and sucbs to drink, Zoro said. Soon all the townsfolk were armed with weapons and scowls. They looked pissed, big bro, Yosaku said with a chuckle. Does that mean the party's over? Johnny asked with a smile. I say the party's just getting started, Jin said with a smirk. Looks like Luffy-chan was right, Alvida said, and seeing as how they planned on turning our captain in for her bounty, they can only be bounty hunters, Nijiko added. Throw pirates a party, get them drunk, then turn them in for their bounties, Zoro said. Looks like there's around 100 of US bags here. We'll gladly take you on, we're not letting you anywhere near our captain. Sound good, Baroque works? How do you know who we are? Mr. 8 shouted in shock and horror. Simple. I used to be a bounty hunter myself. Your organization offered me a job, I refused, Zoro said. Baroque works the criminal organization that blindly follows orders from an unknown boss like obedient dogs. This is a surprise, Mr. 9 said in a calm voice. Since you know who we are, we have no choice but to kill you. The cactus rocks shall have a few more gravestones added to them tonight. Kill them, he shouted. Zoro and the others grinned as the Baroque members charged. So then, shall we? Chapter 15 Fighting on Whiskey. Jin looked around as he was surrounded by a dozen of Baroque members. One lunged for him with his sword raised. He swung, only to miss as Jin ducked, swinging his tonfas as he did so. The man fell to the ground. "Get him!" another shouted before they all charged. Two attacked from behind with swords, only for Jin to block them with his tonfa. He jump-kicked them in the face, sending them flying. He landed on his back, before rolling away from an attack above. "Missed," Jin said, before he nailed the other in the side with a tonfa. "4 down, more to go," Jin thought. "Let this be a lesson for you," he said out loud. "It's only one guy," one shouted. "Get him already." The other bounty hunters charged as Jin smirked, swinging both tonfa as he spun in a circle, smashing everyone into the buildings. "Don't threaten my captain," he said, before running off to help the others. Line break. Johnny and Yosaku stood back to back as they faced about 14 bounty hunters. "There's a lot of them," Johnny said. "Yeah," Yosaku said. "What's wrong, pirates?" one said in a smug tone. "Realizing how stupid it is to try and fight us." Both looked nervous until they heard one bounty hunter say, "Just hand over the brat, and we'll give you a quick trip to hell." Both swordsmen stiffened. "Ready, partner?" Johnny said in a dark tone. "Yeah," Yosaku said in the same tone. The two ducked as some of the bounty hunters charged, then they brought their swords up. The bounty hunters fell to the ground, unconscious. "Let this be a lesson," Johnny said. "To never threaten," Yosaku continued. "Our lil sis," they said together, as the rest of the bounty hunters charged. Only to be knocked out by the duo swordsman. Line break. Alvida swung her mace around as she was charged by several bounty hunters. Said bounty hunters were quickly becoming angry as nothing seemed to hit the woman. Every sword strike or bullet would just slip of her. Anyone who got too close was knocked back by a mace to the face. "Who the hell are you?" one bounty hunter asked. "I am Lady Alvida of the Straw Hats." "Wait a minute," said one bounty hunter spoke up. "Isn't Alvida the name of that fat-ass bitch in the East Blue? She looks nothing like her wanted poster," another said, pulling out said poster. "Who cares? Let's just kill the bitch and hand the brat over to the boss." The surrounding temperature seemed to drop about 20 degrees. The bounty hunters looked to see something that sent them cowering. After seeing the poster and hearing the threat made to her captain, Alvida had adopted a very polite smile, coupled with a murderous aura. Alvida walked away a few minutes later, leaving a pile of beaten and bloodied bounty hunters, her now blood-soaked mace over her shoulder. "Don't you dare threaten Luffy-chan again." Line break. "Hold still, you bitch," a bounty shouted as he held onto his bleeding hand. He and 5 others had surrounded Nijiko, but were quickly reduced to 3 as she waved a knife around in her left hand. They had made a mistake when they'd mentioned the pretty orange head and Luffy. "Not fast enough, boys," she said in a sweet tone. The remaining 3 glared at her while she just smiled. "Die," one of the bounty hunters shouted as she ran at Nijiko. Nijiko stood there, waiting till the woman was almost on top of her, before she quickly dodged, stabbing both of her hands to make her drop her weapon. A quick to the head dropped the woman. Just like picking tangerines, she thought. "Stand still and let us kill you," shouted the last 2 bounty hunters as they charged her. But Nijiko dodged both, and taking them both down with a quick stab to their necks. "Don't threaten my little sisters," she said before walking off. Line break. Whatever bounty hunters remained were quickly dealt with by Zoro. He looked around to see no more bounty hunters coming his way. "Looks like the others took care of the rest, so that just Lee," he said before quickly ducking to avoid getting hit by a ladder. That was close. Dropping the ladder, Miss Monday placed some brass knuckles on her hands before lunging at Zoro. "Eat this," she said as she pinned him to the roof, before bringing her fist down on his head. Superhuman fist. Before she knew it, Miss Monday found herself on her knees, with Zoro's hand on her head. He tightened his grip until the woman passed out. "Big bro," Johnny and Yosaku yelled as they and the others regrouped with him. "Hey, guys," Zoro said, before turning to the remaining 3 Baroque members. "Alright then, who's next?" "It seems we've made a mistake," Mr. 8 said as he glared at Zoro. "That swordsman must be the captain." "Indeed. It's strange that the Marines would give a high bounty to a child," Miss Wednesday said. "Either way, we must capture him," Mr. 8 said. Hey, you forgot us? Everyone looked to see Jin, Johnny, Yosaku, Nijiko and Alvida smirking. HMPH. Miss Wednesday said with a grin. Don't think we'll be easy to beat as the others. We're number agents. Mr. 9 bragged. We're a cut above those fools you brought down. The smaller the number, the higher the rank and power they have. Shut up and fight already. Jin said annoyed. Mr. 8 looked annoyed as he brought his saxophone to lips. Watch out, Zoro yelled. IGAR, before he could finish, he, Miss Wednesday and Mr. 9 were used as a landing pad by Luffy. Oops, she said, as her wings vanished. Zoro, Jin, Olivia, Nijiko, Johnny and Yosaku just stared at the girl. Line break 2 minutes later, Mr. 8, Mr. 9, Miss Monday and Miss Wednesday were now surrounded by the whining Straw Hats and Luffy. Curse you pirates. Mr. 8 as he struggled to sit up. Stop yapping. Jin said. As it turns out, Luffy had been awake for the whole fight. Not wanting to interrupt her friend's fun, she decided to practice her flying. That is until she was knocked out of the air by a strangely dressed otter and vulture. Well now, isn't this a sad sight? Everyone looked up to see a man in a black trench coat with a 5 on it, sunglasses with dreadlocks. Next to him stood a woman who had blonde hair, white heels, an umbrella, a yellow hat, and green eyes. Luffy let out a small growl when she saw the two, her eyes flashed gold. Who are you two? Nijiko asked. Mr. 5, Miss Valentine's Day. Mr. 8 croaked out. Why are you here? The boss sent us here on a mission. Mr. 5 said. He said, someone's found out my secret. So we decided to investigate. Miss Valentine's Day said, and you'll never guess what we found. We've learned that 2 of Baroque's number agents are spies from a distant kingdom. Luffy caught the scent of fear. She looked to see that Miss Wednesday had a scared look on her face. Suddenly, Mr. 8 jumped up and aimed his saxophone at the two. Igarapapa, he shouted as he fired. Luffy flinched at the noise. As long as IGARAM, Captain of Alabasta's Royal Guard breed, you will not harm the princess. Igaram, Captain of Alabasta's Royal Guard, Mr. 5 said as the smoke cleared. In his hand was a picture of Miss Wednesday. And Vivi Nefertari, Princess of Alabasta. By order of Mr. Zero, both of you are to die. Line break after saving Vivi from the 2 agents. Luffy had agreed to take Vivi back home, much to Nami's dismay. And after grabbing Sanji and Usopp, and basically dragging them to the ship, much to Zoro's amusement, they set sail for Alabasta. Looks like the fog's lifting, Nami said after she explained the situation to Usopp and Sanji. Be careful of the rocks, came a voice. I got it handled, Nami said before she noticed something. Hey, did any one of you say that? She asked the other woman. Luffy, who'd been standing by the mast, suddenly stiffened when she sensed an unknown presence on the ship. She spun with a warning growl, to see a woman sitting up on the railing. She had short black hair, and wore a purple outfit, with a purple cowgirl hat. But it was the eyes that drew Luffy's attention. The woman's eyes were filled with such pain, loneliness. Andre minded Luffy of Ace. Luffy caught the scent of flowers and stone. Alerted by their captain's growl, the other Straw Hats whirled around to see the woman. This is a nice ship, the woman said. Vivi gasped at the sight of her. Who are you? Luffy asked. And why are you on my ship? Answer her, Vivi shouted. What are you doing here, Miss All Sunday? Miss All Sunday? Jin asked. Then, she's in Baroque works as well? Nijiko asked. So who's her partner? Alvida asked. Mr. Zero, said Vivi. Crocodiles, Nami shouted. That's right, Robin said, never taking her eyes off Luffy. And I met a few of your friends a little bit ago, princess. You killed them, Vivi screamed, making Luffy, who was closest to Vivi, flinch. The reaction was instant. Usopp aimed his slingshot at her head, while Sanji did the same with a pistol. On the deck below, Alvida had her mace, Jin his tonfa, Nami her staff, Nijiko her knife, while the 3 swordsmen on board had their swords out. Only Kaya and Luffy stayed put. I would really appreciate it if you would, Miss All Sunday said with a smile, before Sanji and Usopp were thrown off the railing. The rest of the crew were disarmed faster than they could blink. While her crewmates cried out about a devil fruit, Luffy felt her hat being lifted from her head. The straw hat flipped through the air before landing in the woman's hand. "So, you're the captain," she said, looking at Luffy as she twirled the hat around her wrist. "I've heard so much about you, Monkey D. Luffy." "Give me my hat back," Luffy growled, not even realizing that the woman had used her full name. Her eyes flashed. "You're not welcome here," Usopp yelled from behind the mast. "Leave now." Picking up a princess who Baroque works have decided to eliminate, Miss All Sunday said, placing the hat on her own head. "Protected by a handful of pirates and a little girl. But your luck gets worse. Because of the next island, Little Garden." "My hat," Luffy all but roared. "Give it to me, don't you think it's a little foolish? Allowing yourselves to be wiped out?" Miss All Sunday said as threw Luffy her hat. Then she threw something over to Vivi. "An eternal pose?" Vivi whispered. "Using that, you can just skip Little Garden," she said. Before anyone realized what was happening, Luffy had taken the eternal pose from Vivi. "No," she said with a growl as she crushed it. Then ignoring Nami and Viv, she looked at Miss All Sunday. "You don't decide where this ship goes." "Well, that's too bad. I'm sorry you didn't accept my offer. If you survive, I hope we meet again." With that she left. The crew looked at Luffy, who huffed angrily. They sighed. Things had just got interesting, and most likely life-threatening. But with Luffy for a captain, it was a given. The 12-year-old half-dragon had a habit of attracting trouble. Being a part of her crew just came with the job description. She. Now onward to Little Garden," Luffy called out in excitement. Then she let out a yawn. "All right, Luffy-chan," Kaya said. "Let's get you to bed." "But I'm not tired," Luffy said, trying to hide another yawn. Her crew chuckled, as Zoro walked over to pick her up. "Bedtime, Captain," he said in a brotherly tone. Luffy pouted as she let herself be carried. Everyone else shook their heads. After saying goodbye to the two giant warriors, Dory and Buggy, and almost getting eaten by a giant goldfish, the crew were on their way to Alabasta. They also had a new addition to the crew, Miss Goldenweek, or Gracie. After knocking out Mr. 3, Luffy had caught Gracie trying to sneak away. After a short chase, Luffy had asked the girl if she had a dream, to which Gracie replied that she wanted to be an artist. Luffy had all but dragged the poor girl to where her friends and the giants were, where Gracie had apologized to the crew for what she helped Mr. 3 do, and to the giants for attempting to disrupt their sacred duel. To Gracie's surprise, everyone had accepted her apology. Luffy then asked the girl to join the crew, which she did after some hesitation. After joining, Gracie had opened up to be a cheerfully and clever girl. She and Luffy quickly became partners in crime. Much to the dismay of the older members of the crew who'd fallen prey to Luffy's pranks, mostly Zoro. The two were currently hiding behind the tangerine bushes from Zoro, who was covered in pink paint, Gracie, and purple feathers, Luffy. "What are you two up to?" The girls jumped to see Nijiko, who'd been tending to the tangerines. "We're hiding from the purple and pink birdie," Luffy said in a hushed tone. Nijiko looked confused until she saw Zoro storming around the deck. Johnny, Yosaku, Usopp and Sanji were rolling on the deck laughing their asses off. "Don't tell him where we are," Gracie said in a hushed tone. Suddenly, a shadow appeared, covering the two. "There you are." Luffy and Gracie slowly turned to see Zoro staring down at them, though he wasn't all that scary, covered in paint and feathers. "Hey, Zoro ni," Gracie said. She'd taken up calling the older members as her big brothers, sisters like Luffy. "Have you seen a pink birdie with purple feathers?" Luffy asked. Several tick marks appeared on the man's forehead. The two girls looked at each other before taking off, with an angry Zoro behind them. "Get back here," he roared as he lunged for the two, only to take a dip in the ocean when he went over the railing. Line break, where do they even get that stuff? Zoro wondered as he walked out of the men's room with dry clothes. At least that crap washed off. Luffy and Gracie were playing tag with Johnny, Yosaku and Usopp. Sanji was in the kitchen. Nijiko was tending the tangerines. Jin was checking their supplies. Alvida was keeping an eye on the youngest members. Kaya was by Vivi and Nami, reading a book. Zoro went to train. Everything was fine, until Gracie and Nami collapsed onto the deck. "Gracie!" Luffy cried as she caught her friend. "Everyone, come quickly," Vivi cried. What's wrong? Jin asked as he came onto the deck. It's Nami, Kaya said, she's burning with a fever. So is Gracie, Alvida said. Line break, will they be okay? Kayane? Luffy asked after they moved Nami and Gracie into the girls' room. It was silent for a few moments while Kaya checked over the two. I don't know, Kaya said. I didn't see any signs that they were sick. It's probably the climate, Vivi said. One of the dangers you encounter upon entering the Grand Line is sickness caused by the extreme weather. Even the most notorious pirates who sail the seas can suddenly get and die. Alvida looked at Luffy, who looked scared. She became worried when she saw the hint of scales. Hey Sanji? Alvida asked. Yes, Alvida Swan? Do you think Luffy-chan could help you make some soup for Nami and Gracie-chan? Alvida said, giving the man a glare. He glanced at Alvida, then Luffy. His eye widened in understanding. Sure thing. Come on Luffy-chan, you can help me. Luffy hesitated. She didn't want to leave Gracie or Nami. Don't worry Luffy, Nijiko said, also noticing the scales. Kaya and I will watch over them, okay? Okay, Nijiko nay, Luffy said, then followed Sanji to the kitchen. Once in the kitchen, Sanji began to pull out the ingredients to make the soup. Here Luffy-chan, you can mix these. Will Gracie and Nami be okay, Sanji ni? Sanji stopped cooking to look at Luffy. The young girl was scared. Scales were beginning to cover her arms. Sanji realized that he needed to do something, lest the girl shift into her full dragon form. He walked over to kneel in front of her. Don't worry Luffy-chan, Gracie-chan and Nami Swan have Kaya Swan taking care of them. Not to mention the rest of us, they'll be fine. Luffy looked up at Sanji. The scales vanished. Now why don't you help me with this soup, Line break. As the days continued, the crew's morale dropped more and more. Nami and Gracie's condition had worsened. Kaya and Nijiko stayed by their sides the entire time. The rest of the crew did what they could to help. Johnny, Yosaku and Usopp played in the snow with Luffy, trying to distract her. The young dragon was worried for her friends, not to mention that her body was wanting to shift. She hadn't shifted since the fight with Arlong. It didn't help when she and her crew had run into a bunch of stupid pirates led by a whiny captain who bit off a part of the Mary. Already irritated, Luffy sent the man flying with a gum-gum bazooka. Everyone, shouted Jin from the crow's nest. I see it, the Winter Island. Really? Luffy cried with a smile on her face. Yup. The rest of the crew sighed with relief. Yeah, now we can get a doctor for Gracie and Nami nay, Luffy cheered. It was then the crew noticed something. Hey, Luffy-chan? Yes, Usopp ni? Aren't you cold? Why would I be? It's -10 degrees, Vivi said, and you're wearing nothing but shorts, sandals, a t-shirt and a hoodie. But I'm not that cold. It was true, thanks to her dragon's blood. Luffy's body was slightly warmer than most humans. It also helped that her rubber skin acted like an insulator, keeping the cold out and the heat in. This helped her keep warm when she was swimming. If it ever got too hot, Luffy could lower her body temperature. But Vivi didn't know that. Please put this on Luffy-chan, Alvida said, holding a coat for Luffy. Luffy huffed, but put it on. Line break. It took a while before they reached the island. However, when they did, Luffy caught the scent of a lot of people, fear and gunpowder. Stop right there pirates, they heard someone shout. Everyone looked to see many people on both sides of the river that they'd entered with guns in their hands. They didn't look too happy. Then a big man with a spade on his back stepped forward. Turn around and leave, he said. You pirates are not welcome here. Please, we need a doctor, Luffy said. The people's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the young girl. We've got 2 people on board who are very ill, Vivi pleaded. Liar, one of them said. This is our country, now get lost or else. Please, Luffy said again. She took a step forward. My fry. Shut up, another shouted. Then the sound of a gun went off. Luffy yelped when the bullet grazed her shoulder. Luffy, the crew shouted, pissed that these people dared to shoot at their youngest member. Big mistake, Sanji said. Stop, everyone turned to Luffy. Put your weapons away, she ordered. But, it's just a graze, she said, then she turned to the shore. Her crewmates watched as she got on her knees. Please help my friend and big sister. Everyone stared at the little girl in shock before Vivi and Nijiko joined her. Please, they said together. After a moment the big man spoke up. "We'll show you to our town. My name is Dalton," he said. "Follow me." "Thank you," Luffy said. "Nice job, Captain Luffy," Vivi said, impressed with the young girl's behavior. Luffy grinned. "Though I must warn you," Dalton said, "there is only one doctor on this island, and she's a witch." Line break soon. Luffy, Johnny, Yosaku, Sanji, Vivi, Nejico, Usopp entered a town with a sick Gracie and Nami. Zoro, Jin, Kaya, Alvida and Karoo stayed behind to guard the ship. "Welcome to a town of Big Horn," Dalton said as he led them towards his house. "So much snow," Luffy said. "Snow country," Usopp said as he, Johnny and Yosaku sneezed. Finally, Sanji said, "Now Nami Swan and Gracie-chan can get well." After some more walking and bowing, they entered Dalton's home. "Here, place them on here," he said, motioning to the bed. While they got Nami and Gracie into the bed, Dalton turned to Luffy. "I apologize for our behavior earlier," he said, gesturing to her shoulder. "It's okay," Luffy said, giving him a smile. "You were just protecting your home." His eyes widened a bit. "How do you, so Mr. Dalton," Vivi said. "You said something about a witch." Dalton glanced at Luffy again, before he responded. "Do you see those mountains out the window?" "You mean those ones?" Johnny asked. "Those are called the Drum Rockies," he said. "Do you see a castle on the tallest on in the middle?" "Hey, he's right," Yosaku said. Sure enough, there at the top of the tallest mountain was a castle. "The only doctor, Dr. Kureha, lives in that castle." "Seriously?" Vivi asked. "Of all the places to live," Sanji said. "Well, hurry and call her down, it's an emergency." "Sadly, we have no way to contact her," Dalton said. "What? And she's your only?" Sanji asked. "She's an exceptional doctor, but very odd," he said. "She's 140 years old." 140? Sanji yelled, while most of them stared in shock. "Is she even alive?" "I don't care how old she is," Luffy said, gaining everyone's attention. "If she's a doctor then she can help Gracie and Nami Nay. Unfortunately, the only thing you can do is wait for her to come down here." "I'm not waiting," Luffy said with a growl. "If she won't come then we'll go to her." Line break. Everyone had gathered outside the house as Vivi and Nejico tied Nami and Gracie to Johnny and Yosaku's back. Luffy and Sanji would go with them. Vivi and Dalton didn't look happy that a 12-year-old was going. "The rest of us will stay here," Nejico said. "We'll just slow you down." "Okay, let's go," Luffy said, growing impatient. "I can't stop you, but you should climb the other side of the mountain," Dalton said. "The route from here is full of Lapons. They're giant, violent, man-eating rabbits. If a pack attacks you, you're finished." "Don't worry, we'll be safe," Luffy said. "Yeah, I'll take care of them," Sanji said. As they turned to leave, Luffy caught sight of Nejico. The woman was staring at Nami with fear in her eyes. "Don't worry, Nejico Nay," Luffy said as she hugged her. Her eyes flashed gold. "I'll protect them." Nejico looked at the little girl, before she smiled. "I'll hold you to it, Luffy-chan." "Alright, let's go," Luffy said, before she and the others took off running. "I wonder if they'll be okay," Dalton said, "especially the young girl." "They'll be fine," Usopp said. "Especially with a dragon watching them," Nejico thought. Line break. Achoo. Johnny sneezed as he, Yosaku, Sanji and Luffy steadily hiked up to the mountain. "Brr. It's cold," Yosaku said. "You got that right," Sanji said. "How can you walk around in just sandals and shorts, Luffy-chan?" "Because I'm a dragon," Luffy said. "I'm usually not affected by the cold." "I wish I was a dragon," Johnny said. Yosaku and Sanji couldn't help but agree. They kept on walking and dodging Lapons. The Luffy just growled when they got near her. Everything was fine, that is, until the Lapons started jumping up and down on the path ahead. "What are they doing?" Johnny asked. "Why are they jumping?" Yosaku asked. Luffy's eyes widened in terror, while Sanji paled his cigarette falling from his mouth. "Don't tell me, are they?" Sanji said in horror. "Yup," Luffy said. "Huh?" Johnny and Yosaku said as they looked at the two. Sanji, completely forgetting the fact that Luffy was there, started swearing. "Those damn bunnies, great. They've done it now, this isn't good." "What's wrong, big bro Sanji?" the duo swordsman asked. "We need to move," Luffy said, as she and Sanji began to back up. "We're running again," Johnny asked. "Where to?" Yosaku asked. "Anywhere," the two screamed, "as long as it's far away." That's when they heard a deep rumbling going through the snow beneath their feet. The ground began to shake. Luffy, Sanji, Johnny, Yosaku watched as the thick snow above them began to slide down mountain, and before anyone knew it, a giant wall of white appeared, heading straight for them. "Because there's about to be an avalanche," Sanji shouted as the two former bounty hunters screamed. Luffy wasted no time, she shifted into her full dragon form, and crouched next to her friends. "Get on," she said. The guys wasted no time, they quickly climbed onto their captain's back. "Hold on," Luffy said as she took off down the mountain as the endless waves of snow continued to chase after them. As fast as Luffy was in her dragon form, she was weighed down by her 5 passengers. She knew she could not outrun it, and since she was still learning to fly, there was no way she could do it now with her 5 crewmates. Sanji realized this as well. "Luffy-chan," Sanji screamed, "get to high ground." "Where can I go?" "Over there," Johnny cried, pointing to a high ledge. Luffy ran over to the ledge. At the last second, she jumped onto it as the avalanche caught up. She stood there panting, before Yosaku screamed. Luffy looked to see more snow tumbling down, and this time, Luffy couldn't avoid it. The force of the avalanche knocked the young dragon off her feet and sent her flying. Sanji, Johnny and Yosaku held onto their captain's back for dear life. Thankfully she was able to right herself using her wings. She managed to glide herself to land on one of the tree trucks. "Is everyone okay?" Luffy asked as they slid down the mountain on the tree like a toboggan. "We're okay, lil sis," Johnny said. "Are Nami, Nae and Gracie okay?" "They're fine," Yosaku said. "But thanks to those damn bunnies, we're heading farther down the mountain," Sanji growled. "Next time I see them I'm making them into a stew." Unfortunately, it seems like he jinxed it, for the herd of Lapons from earlier appeared on tree trunks. Luffy growled out a warning, lashing out her tail when they got too close. Sanji kicked the ones she couldn't get. But there were too many. To make matters worse, they were headed for a ledge that had jagged rocks sticking out of the snow. "Luffy-chan, jump!" Sanji cried. So Luffy jumped, but as she did so, Johnny lost his grip. He fell with Nami on his back, straight for the rock. "Ah!" Johnny knee, Nami nay. But then Sanji grabbed Johnny and threw him back onto Luffy. But Sanji had lost his hold. "Big bro, ladies get treated gently. So you take care of her," were the last he said, before he crashed into the rock with a horrible crunching sound. He was sent flying through the air, unconscious. "Sanji knee," Luffy screamed out as she landed on the other side of the rock. "Big bro," Johnny and Yosaku screamed out. But Sanji never answered, instead he vanished underneath the sliding snow. "Saw and I knee." Line break, Luffy grunted as she pulled herself up the mountain. After the avalanche had stopped, Luffy had immediately started to search for Sanji. She had Johnny and Yosaku wait at the base of the ledge, where they were somewhat sheltered by the wind and falling snow. She then spent the next 10 minutes searching for Sanji's scent, becoming more panicked with each passing second. But then she froze when she heard the faint sound of a heartbeat. Luffy chirped in joy as she used her dragon muzzle to dig through the snow. She didn't dare use her claws, to reveal a very injured Sanji. After making her way back to Johnny and Yosaku, she had proceeded to make the journey back up the mountain with them on her back. She used her wings as a makeshift shield to shelter them from the wind and snow, and using her own body heat to keep them warm. But that seemed like hours ago. Now she was climbing up the steep mountain, with her tail wrapped around Sanji and her wings around Johnny, Nami, Yosaku, and Gracie as a cage to keep a mighty heave. Luffy pulled herself over the edge of the mountain. She staggered away from the edge, gently unwrapped her tail from around Sanji, and all but collapsed in the snow. "Where, huff? Here, huff," Luffy managed to get out as her vision swam. The last thing she heard was the sound of footsteps followed by a startled gasp. She caught the scent of medicine and fur. But then her eyes closed as she drifted off to sleep. Line break, Chopper's paw of the wind was howling atop the mountain peak, whipping the ever-falling snow into a frenzy. He almost missed the smell that had miraculously made its way onto the castle grounds. He stood, the sled of newly acquired supplies forgotten, and stared out the great gate, his gaze fixed towards the mountain's ledge. "Chopper, what are you standing around for?" his teacher, Dr. Kureha, yelled at him from an upper window. "Hurry and bring the rest of those boxes up." When he didn't respond, she looked up to try and see what he was staring at. Neither expected to watch as a dragon pulled itself over the mountain's edge. Chopper watched, mouth open, as the dragon staggered away from the edge, and gently placed a smaller form on the soft snow. Then the dragon collapsed. "We're huff, here, huff." Chopper gasped at the sudden voice in his head, but by then he was running towards the dragon, having noticed the other forms on its back. "Chopper," Dr. Kureha yelled, noticing the other forms as well, "get them inside." He carried the others, 3 men and 2 girls, through the gate when the Dr. Kureha reached him. "What the hell?" she asked, before composing herself when she noticed their conditions. She quickly undid the knots that were keeping an orange-haired woman and a little girl with black braided hair tied to a man with sunglasses and a man with a tattoo on his cheek. While she did that, Chopper turned his attention back to the dragon, only to find that it had vanished. In its place was black-haired little girl in a straw hat. Chopper quickly brought her in as well. Her small form was shaking. "These 2 boys are going to lose their limbs. Boil some water and throw them in. Throw that little girl in as well." Chopper nodded and, with the little girl still in his arms, bent over the blonde human to carefully pull back his coat and shirt. "This one has some broken ribs, can I operate on him?" Kureha made an affirmative sound and gently lifted the 2 girls. These 2 girls seemed to be the worst off. "Looks like some kind of virus going by their temperatures. And it's not local." She frowned with worry. "Let's hurry and bring them inside." Suddenly, the little black-haired girl in Chopper's arms reached out to grab the doctor's arm. "Don't worry, we'll take care of you and your friends," Dr. Kureha said to the girl in a gentle voice. The child looked at her with tired eyes. "Please, they're my friends," she managed to say. "I know," Kureha said simply. The little girl looked at the older woman, before she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Line break. The next time Luffy woke up, she found herself in some sort of room, tucked in bed. She sat up, rubbing her eyes as she yawned. But then she caught the scent of medicine and fur. Luffy looked around to see what she could only describe as the most fluffiest, cutest, adorable reindeer she'd ever seen. "Hi," Luffy said, but jumped when the reindeer smashed into the bookshelves behind it. She giggled when he attempted to hide. "You're hiding the wrong way," she said. He slowly shifted so he was hiding correctly. Shut up," he spat. "Cool," Luffy said, smiling. "You talk?" "Ah," he yelled. "Chopper, what are you doing?" Luffy looked up to see the elderly woman she saw earlier when she. Luffy gasped as she remembered what happened. "My friends," she said, jumping out of the bed. "Where am I?" "Your friends are fine, child, they're currently sleeping," the woman said. "I am Dr. Kureha. This is Chopper," she said, pointing to the reindeer. "Hi Obasan, hi Chopper," Luffy said with a big smile. "I'm Luffy." Kureha smiled a little at the girl. "Chopper, go check the other girls," Kureha ordered. Chopper was gone before Luffy could even blink. "He's so cut," she said. This brought a laugh to Kureha. Suddenly, a shriek was heard, followed by a crash. Kureha looked into the hallway with Luffy peeking around her legs. They saw Chopper being held by Sanji, saying he was gonna make some venison stew, while Johnny and Yosaku were biting his arms. The thing that was funny was the fact that the duo swordsmen were still asleep. Suddenly, Luffy watched in awe as the small reindeer turned into a big bulky fur-covered human. "I'm not food," Chopper roared, as he slammed his large fists into the 3 men. Finally free of the humans that tried to eat him, Chopper took off down the hall. A large smile appeared on Luffy's face as Chopper disappeared around a corner. Line break soon, Kureha lead Luffy to where Nami and Gracie were. "Gracie, Nami nay," Luffy cried when she saw them. "Hey, Luffy-chan," Nami said, her face slightly red. "Luffy," Gracie cried, happy to see her friend. "Now calm down, little dragon," Kureha said. "Your friends are still a little sick." Suddenly the door burst open, to reveal Johnny, Yosaku and Sanji trying once again to catch Chopper. "Ah," The reindeer yelled. Help! Faster than anyone could blink, Luffy had snatched Chopper and knocked the 3 men upside the head. The next thing Chopper knew, he was being held by the 2 little girls. Said little girls were giving the 3 men looks that told them they should watch their backs. Leave him alone, Luffy yelled. He's not food, Gracie yelled. Sorry about them, Luffy said. What's your name? Gracie asked. Why should I tell you, human? He spat. 'Cause you're cute, both girls responded. The reindeer blushed and did a silly dance. Shut up, he yelled. Your compliments don't make me happy. Both girls giggled. This is Tony Chopper. He's a regular blue-nosed reindeer who ate the human fruit, Kureha said. Then she turned to the 3 men. You 3 get out. These girls need to rest, the other little girl can stay. Chopper, you stay here and take care of the other 2 girls, she said to the reindeer, who was still being held by Gracie and Luffy. With that, Kureha, Sanji, Johnny and Yosaku left. Luffy sat next to Nami and Gracie and looked at Chopper. You're interesting, she said with a grin. I like you. Shut up, he yelled, once again contradicting himself. This time even Nami giggled with the girls. How come you don't like us? Nami asked. Chopper looked at the older woman nervously. It's alright, you don't have to tell us. No, it's alright. I'll tell you. I trust you, Chopper said, before he began to tell the girls of being an outcast because of his blue nose, and being saved by Dr. Hilruck and how Wapol tricked and killed him. Luffy, Nami, and Gracie listened vigorously. Why don't you join us, Chopper Nee? Luffy asked. Chopper stared at the girl in shock. Don't be stupid, I'm a reindeer. Why the hell would I go with you humans? Chopper asked, his loud voice holding a touch of sadness. I mean, aren't you 3 scared of me? I'm a reindeer, but I walk upright, and I can talk. So? Luffy asked. I'm half dragon. Chopper's eyes widened. Really? Yup, Luffy said, as she held up her arm. Chopper watched in awe as the girl's eyes changed to a golden amber, while sapphire-colored scales appeared on her arm. He also took notice of her sharp canines, definitely not a human characteristic. Then he realized something. Wait, that dragon I saw earlier, was that you? Yup, Luffy said. Suddenly, Chopper and Luffy stiffened when a scent reached their noses. What's wrong? Nami asked as their faces turned to anger and irritation. Wapol's back. With that, Chopper turned into his actual reindeer-looking form and took off out of the room, with Luffy right behind him. Line break Wapol and his 2 henchmen, Chess and Kuramaru. It's just as I left it, said Wapol. Now I shall reclaim the throne of Drum Kingdom. Wait, your majesty. There's a strange flag flying from the spire. A pirate flag, Wapol cried. What happened to the flag of the Drug Kingdom? A sudden cackle from the castle entrance brought the 3's attention. Standing in front of the entrance was Kureha, Chopper in his reindeer form and Luffy. That old rag? Kureha asked. I burned it. So, Dr. Kureha, it's you. Wapol said angrily. The last survivor of the Great Doctor Hunt. You just won't die. I've turned this castle into a mausoleum for Hiralik. You rotten brats are no longer welcome here. Now leave this island. Drum Kingdom is no more. Mausoleum. For that charlatan. Don't make me laugh, Wapol said, before he started laughing. Luffy let out a small growl. He really reminded her of the smug egotistical nobles back on Dawn. It was then Wapol noticed the little girl next to Chopper. Ah! He yelled outraged as pointed an accusing finger at the girl. It's you? You're the brat that dared to hide. He didn't get to finish as Luffy, from where she stood, slammed her fist right into his face, sending him flying. Everyone present was gaping at the girl, their jaws wide open. And you're that big mouth that tried to eat my ship, Luffy said as her arm snapped back. Chess and Kuramaru made a frantic grab at Wapol. They managed to grab their king's feet. How dare you? Kuramaru yelled in outrage as he and Chess pulled up Wapol. This isn't a lowly commoner. This is Wapol, the king and absolute ruler of Drum Kingdom. That's right, Chess yelled, also outraged. Show some respect, he's this country's monarch. Who cares? Tin Mouth is nothing but a big bully, Luffy said, sticking out her tongue. I've had it with this brat. Munch Munch Factory, Wapol said, as he began to transform into a house, complete with doors, chimney and windows. Then to everyone's disgust, He snatched his henchmen into his mouth and began to eat them. "He's eating them," Luffy yelled. How could he eat his friends? The door on him opened and two voices, speaking as one. "We're Drum Kingdom's greatest warrior, Chessmarimo." They watched as a large form stepped onto the snow. "Really?" Luffy said unimpressed. "They're just standing in each other's shoulders." Wapol glared at the girl. Article 1 of the Drum Kingdom's constitution. Those who defy the wishes of their king will be put to death. Wapol said as he sneered at the three. "You've defied my wishes, so you all are going to be punished for your crime. But first, I'll deal with the matter of that quack's flag soiling my castle." Then without a warning, he aimed one of his arm cannons at the flag and fired. Chopper gasped in horror as the flag burned. Tears began to fall down his face. Luffy watched as the flag waved under the fire of the cannonball and leaned down a little. Her eyes flashed gold. "How dare you? You attacked the doctor's flag," Chopper yelled as he ran towards Wapol. Chessmarimo tried to stop him, but Chopper just ran between their legs. Chopper turned into his big bulky form and tackled Wapol. "Doctor, he tried to save even you," Chopper yelled with tears in his eyes. He reared his arm back, ready to punch Wapol in the face, but then he stopped. Chopper stared at Wapol for a moment, before he lowered his arm. I won't hurt you if you just leave this country forever," he said. "Chopper, what are you doing?" Kureha yelled. "Even if he did promise that, you can't trust a word that man says." Chopper turned towards Kureha, but, Doctor said. He didn't get to finish as Wapol raised an arm cannon to the reindeer's face and fired. "Chopper, Kureha." Wapol laughed as he stood. "Pathetic," he said. "Hey, big mouth." Everyone looked up to find Luffy standing defiantly next to the flag. Her coat was tied around the flag's pole to secure it in place. "You brat. You guys are just fake pirates," she shouted in anger. "That's why you don't know what flying a pirate flag means. You're just a bunch of fakes who didn't risk your lives." Wapol began to laugh. "What a pirate flag means? Don't make me laugh, flags have no meaning." Luffy's now golden eyes narrowed. "If you think that, you're even dumber than you look." "What? Pirate flags stand for something, big mouth," Luffy said. "They're not raised as some kind of joke." "Brat!" Wapol yelled. "The only joke is that I've let you live as long as I have. And since you've dared to put that flag back after I've knocked it down, it's time I delivered the punchline." He raised his cannon arm and fired at the flag once again. "I told you," Luffy yelled as the cannonball hit. "Ha ha. That brat was blown to pieces," Wapol said cockily. But then the smoke cleared. It revealed Luffy holding onto the flag. The young girl was burnt in several places, but relatively unharmed. "You can't break it," she yelled as she continued to hold the flag up. Wapol stopped laughing. "A pirate flag is someone's pledge to risk their life," Luffy said as she glared at Wapol. "It's not something to laugh at, it stands for something you jackasses will never understand." Wapol and his men were left stunned and speechless by the young girl's words. "It won't break, ever," Luffy growled. "Because the skull is a symbol of faith." Chopper laid on the ground staring up at the little girl in awe. "Hey, Chopper knee," Luffy yelled. "I'm gonna kick their asses for showing your father's flag disrespect. You in?" Chopper wasn't sure what stunned him more, the vow or being called a big brother. "Me. You damn brat," Wapol yelled. "You just don't get it, do you? Fine. Since you feel so strongly about it, I'll destroy you as well as the flag." He aimed the cannon at Luffy again. "I don't think so, Tubby." Everyone looked to see Sanji standing at the entrance. Behind him stood Johnny and Yosaku. "I have no idea what's going on," Sanji said. "But I'm not going to let you harm Luffy-chan again." "Same here," Johnny and Yosaku said. However, Sanji only took one step before his back cracked. "Looks like your backbone gave out," Kureha said nonchalantly. "Your condition will worsen if you keep moving." Before Sanji could do anything, he was viciously kicked in the back by Kureha, causing Sanji to scream in pain as he fell to the snow. "Big bro!" Johnny and Yosaku shouted. "You boys stay back," Kureha said to the two men, as she sat on Sanji. "Let the kids handle this." Johnny and Yosaku nodded, not wanting to deal with the scary old woman. Wapol found the entire scene before him amusing and laughed in delight. "If you want to fight among yourselves, then please, by all means do so, but I hope you will at least watch as the brat and the flag get blown to bits." He glared as Luffy, who glared right back. "Say your prayers, brat." "Stop it," Chopper screamed as he attempted to attack Wapol. "That's the spirit," Luffy encouraged as she planted the flag onto the broken tower. "Go get him, Chopper knee." But before he could get to Wapol, he was forced back by Chessmarimo. "Sorry, freak. But there's no way I'll let you anywhere near our king," the fused man said. Chopper just glared as he shrank down. "You must be that Yeti the villagers hated and feared. They tried to kill you and chase you away, right?" The fused man smiled, pointing at Chopper. "I bet you spent your whole life alone with no friends. You're a monster. Nobody likes you, they try to kill you. But here you are, trying to save this country. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard." "Shut up," Chopper yelled. "Even if I don't have friends, I can still fight for something I believe in. As long as that flag flies, I will." From the tower, Luffy smiled. "That's not true," she yelled down to Chopper. "You do have friends. I'm your friend, Chopper knee." Then, Luffy rocketed down, dive-bombed into the ground. Wapol and Chessmarimo were knocked back from the snow she kicked up. Chopper cried in worry for the girl, but when the snow cleared, she was kneeling in the SND. "You should be flat as a pancake," Chopper yelled in a stunned voice. "But I'm not," she said, "'cause I'm made of rubber." "Rubber? Yup," she said before pointing to Chessmarimo. "Hey, Chopper knee, think you can take care of him?" "Him," Chopper repeated, glaring at Chessmarimo. "Piece of cake." "Good," Luffy said as she looked at Wapol. "I'll take care of Big Mouth." "You dare to knock me, this country's monarch, over brat?" Wapol demanded hotly as he glared down at the little girl. "You'll pay for that insult." "My name is Tony Chopper, not freak." Luffy turned her attention from Wapol to Chopper, who held up a little yellow ball in his hooves. "It's the name the greatest doctor in the world gave me. He may have forgiven you for trying to destroy his flag, but I have not." Luffy smiled at Chopper before she realized that Wapol was nowhere to be found. HMPH, Luffy huffed as she tried to use her nose. She could pick up the scents of Chopper, Johnny, Yosaku, Sanji, Kureha, who smelled like plums and medicine, and the mixed scent of Chessmarimo. She could even smell that furry hippo, but where? "He's in the castle," Luffy said, as she picked up Big Mouth's scent. "He must have slipped inside the castle," Sanji said. "Nami, Swan and Gracie-chan are in there," he shouted as he attempted to crawl into the castle, but couldn't move thanks to Kureha. Luffy wasted no time, she ran into the castle followed by Johnny and Yosaku. "Line break, what the hell happened to my castle?" Wapol yelled as he looked around at all the snow inside the castle. "They'll pay for this," he growled, before he caught sight of Nami and Gracie slowly walking out of a room. "We gotta get out of here," Nami whispered to Gracie. "We can't stay here." "Hold it," the two jumped around to see Wapol. "You two must be friends of that straw hat brat." "Nope," Nami said as she moved in front of Gracie, feeling that this guy wasn't a nice one. "We're just a traveling navigator and artist." "Is that so?" Wapol asked. "Yes. Nice meeting you," Gracie said as she and Nami started walking away. "Bye then," Wapol said, before turning to walk away. Then he froze. He spun around to face the two who were running down the hall. "Liar!" he shouted as he chased after them. The chase continued for a minute before Wapol got stuck on the staircase. "Crap, I'm stuck. Let's get out of here," Nami said to Gracie. But then, to the disgust of the two girls, Wapol flipped his lower jaw up as he began to eat himself. "A little bone and muscle shifting," he said, before popping out back out as a thin man. Wapol slim. Then he looked at the two girls. Nami placed herself in between him and Gracie. "Leave Nami Nay and Gracie alone," Luffy shouted as she kicked the man away. "Luffy-chan, Luffy, Nami Nay, Gracie, are you two okay?" "We're fine, Luffy-chan," Nami said, as Johnny and Yosaku caught up. "Not for long," Wapol shouted as he stood in front of a large door. "This is the weapons room. After I've devoured all of these weapons, they'll become a part of me. Now I'll finish you off, brat." He reached for the key, only to find that it was gone. "My key, it's gone." They all stared at him as he stared right back with a blank expression. Then he took off running again. "Johnny ni, Yosaku ni, Stay with Nami and Gracie," Luffy ordered as she chased after Wapol. Wapol ran through the castle with Luffy right behind him. "Will you stop running and fight?" Luffy yelled. But then Wapol darted into a room on his right. "Time to kick your ass," Luffy said as she ran into the room, only find herself facing a giant cannon. "That's what you think, brat," Wapol said as he pulled the lever. "Die." But nothing happened. Wapol just stared, dumbfounded, at the cannon as he threw the switch a few more times, before his eyes bugged out. A sudden chirping sound drew their attention. Luffy awed when she caught sight of the baby snowbird in the mouth of the cannon, though she started laughing at the expression on Wapol's face. Though she stopped laughing when Wapol attempted to eat the bird. Luffy reached up and shut his mouth with her hand. "I don't care if you're a king, god, or some random person," Luffy said as she stared the older man down, "because I'm gonna kick your ass." "Foolish brat," Wapol said around the girl's hand. "Don't you know that the Drum Kingdom is a part of the world government? If you add a—" He didn't get to finish as Luffy's hand shifted into a claw. He flinched when she dug her claws in. "I told you," she said, as she raised her other hand into the air. "I don't care if I become a criminal, because I'm a pirate." With that she gave him an uppercut that sent Wapol into the ceiling. Wapol was stuck in a daze, until he looked around to see Hiralick's flag waving in the wind. But then Luffy appeared in front of him with a cocky grin. "I told you not to mess with this flag," the 12-year-old said as she stretched her arms back. "Bye-bye, Mr. Big Mouth." "Gum gum," she said, ignoring the man's pleas to stop. "Bazooka." Her arms snapped forward, slamming into Wapol, sending him flying into the sky with a ding. Line break. Luffy sat next to the flag, gazing into the sky. Despite that nap she took earlier, she was still tired, though it wasn't surprising, since she had overexerted her dragon abilities. A sudden flash of green below caught her eye. She looked over the edge of the castle to see Zoro, Jin, Alvida, Negico, Usopp, Kaya, Vivi and some of the villagers climbing out of what looked like a lift. She watched as Negico sprinted towards the castle. Even from this height she could hear her friends. "Seems we've got more guests," she heard Kureha say. "Where's Nami?" Negico asked, her voice filled with concern for her sister. "The girls are inside. Their fevers are gone and they'll be just fine." "Thank goodness," Negico said in relief. "You okay?" "This is Nami-chan's sister," she heard Kaya say. "Where's Wapol?" she heard Dalton demand. "Gone," Kureha said. Luffy giggled at the dumbfounded expressions on Dalton and the villagers' faces. "Huh? I believe that little girl in the straw hat sent him flying," Kureha said with a cackle. "Luffy-chan?" Alvida asked. "Where is she?" "Why you mean, that thing we saw flying away, was Wapol?" Dalton asked. "Yes," Kureha said, "and I believe that the little girl is still on top of the castle." Zoro ni. Zoro only had enough time to brace himself as Luffy rocketed down from the castle tower, straight into him, burying them both into the snow. Line break. It was night now and most of the Straw Hats were outside. Usopp, Johnny and Yosaku were playing in the snow. Zoro was doing push-ups. Jin was looking up at the falling snow, and Alvida was keeping an eye on Luffy, who was calling out Chopper's name. "Chopper ni," she shouted. "Give it up, Luffy-chan," Usopp said. "It's obvious that he doesn't want to be a pirate," Zoro said. Luffy stared defiantly at Zoro. "Not true, Zoro ni," she said, before she called out Chopper's name again. "She's still looking for me," Chopper thought as he stared down at the girl from atop the castle. "I want to go, but I can't. I'm not one of them." Luffy stopped when she caught Chopper's scent. She turned with a large smile on her face. "Chopper ni, have you decided to join?" "I can't," he said in a quiet voice, his hat covering his eyes. "Sure you can. It'll be fun." "I can't," he said as Kaya, Negico, who was dragging Sanji, Nami and Gracie came outside. "I'm a reindeer. I'm not a human. I've got hooves, antlers and blue nose. I'm nothing but a mons." "Shut up," shouted the 12-year-old, "let's go." That was all Chopper needed before the tears started to fall as the rest of Luffy's crew smiled. Line break. The next morning, everyone was sleeping peacefully. Well, about as peacefully as you can with a screaming chef and 2 swordsmen. "What is going on?" Nami asked as she and everyone else, including Chopper, ran onto the deck. None were prepar standing there, wrapped around Mary's mast covered in makeup and wearing dresses, was Sanji, Johnny and Yosaku. All three men had tears running down their faces. Silence rang through the air, before Zoro broke it by roaring in laughter. He may not like it when Luffy and Gracie prank him. But when they did it on the Love Cook, or anyone else, it was feekin' hilarious. Nami and Najiko were the next to start laughing, followed by everyone else, save Chopper who had no idea what was going on. Luffy and Gracie sat in the crow's nest high-fiving each other as they listened to the laughter below.